When is it safe to separate your litters from the mom? This week is basically travel week for all the babies from the first litter of the year. And I am trying to get some of them. We use bottles here or bowls here, and they are not used to bottles. And so one of them that is the buyer she is flying in today actually, and driving home tomorrow with a trio that she bought. And so she shipped all of the travel equipment and like bottles and things to me. And I didn't really think to say anything about, yeah, they're not used to bottles. So I'm gonna attach these to their pens and try and help get them used to the bottles ahead of time. So anyways, what age can you separate them? The general rule of thumb is right around 5 to 6 weeks is like the earliest that's probably advisable to separate the litters. However, the doe is done feeding them as early as 3 weeks. Like she starts weaning them around 2.5 weeks. And you want to really watch to make sure, and I've talked about, there's a previous video about when you need to start feeding them a little extra, just in case she's already started to reduce that amount. So ideally around 2.5 to 3 weeks, start just giving them a little bit of pellets, see like, are they gonna try them? Are they acting like they're starving? That sort of thing. So that's when you would start trying to get them on other feed and actually weaning them. However, separating them is a whole nother story. So, a couple of things that you need to think about first though. If you separate them, you cannot put them back with mama after probably a day or two. Typically because like she's already started to separate herself from them. And normally like if we didn't house them together at all, she would be running, like miles away. You're not miles, that's an exaggeration, but very far away. Like she would be going off on her own, just leaving, and so like she in the wild or anything, like typically the moms don't stay with their litters at all. They just feed them and leave. So you need to pay attention to one, how is she behaving towards the litter already? Is she okay? Or like this doe here on the picture, she is a great mom. Like she's very attentive up to a point. And then right around like 6 to 7 weeks, she really starts getting withdrawn from them. She will even, sometimes if you let them go too long, she'll even get a little aggressive to them. So that's one thing you need to watch. But the other important thing and factor is that, do you have enough cages to put them in? Because you can't go put them back together if you realize, like I need to keep separating them, or I want to keep this one, but these need separated, that sort of thing, right? So think about the cage space that you do have before separating any of them, okay? So I typically will keep a few open holes, which for rabbit cages, holes is a separate cage, for times when if people change their minds, life happens, they can't come get a rabbit, or I decide I want to keep one or two just to see how they're growing out, or like just weird things happen. Like maybe you see a couple of certain babies in one litter are starting to get real bossy. Then don't separate the entire litter from the mom. Just pull the ones out that are starting to get really bossy. I normally will pull the litter out, then separate the bucks and the does. And the girls started getting fussy. And at 9 weeks, the girls fought. So that is another thing where you need to kind of, it can be really tempting to be like, I want to separate them early, but if they're behaving themselves and you don't have enough space and you don't have pickup scheduled, like in the books, do not take into account or assume that they are leaving if you do not have a date scheduled down, okay? If you are tired of your backyard farm taking out way more than you ever planned out of your family's operating budget, check out the Profitable Backyard Farm Playbook, which is found in the description and gives you the complete strategy of how I brought my small rabbitry up to earning multiple 4 figures a year with just 12 rabbits or less at a time. Some of the benefits of separating them even before the 8-week point. Now, the reason that I say 8 weeks, at least for here in Ohio, is that is the legal age that you're allowed to sell an animal and it leave your property. So obviously people can place deposits and things like that, but it's not allowed to leave after 8 weeks or until it's 8 weeks. So with rabbits, I like to have them separated no later than 10 weeks. Even then, that is really too late in my, not too late, but you're gonna, one, run into potential issues of them getting reattached to the mom, or them, like I said, the siblings fighting. And so that also, with them being together, there's something about it that you don't want to allow things to trigger the wild behavior. And so then that would cause the fighting. But then it also gives you a poor, not a poor, but like a bad animal to handle. It's a poor pet experience is what I'm trying to get across. It gives you an animal that's harder to handle. They can be fussier when you go to pick them up or manage them. They kick back a lot more. They can even not be aggressive necessarily, but just not be a pleasant animal. So that's why it's really to your benefit. My preferred window is 6 to 8 weeks, getting them on their own. But you can probably separate them, like let's say you're raising meat rabbits, you could separate them as early as 5 weeks, I would say would be fine. The only thing that I would not hesitate, but recommend that you watch is make sure that they are eating pellets fully on their own. This was 2 years ago, I believe. Sometimes you'll get a doe that's a pushover, and this was Evelyn, if you've been around a while. She was a fawn doe. She was huge. She loved her raising her babies. She would let them nurse up to 5 weeks old. They weren't fully nursing, but enough to where they were not fully wanting to try pellets yet. And so that's where you really need to watch, because I tried to separate them right around, it wasn't 5 weeks, but it was a little bit before 6 weeks anyways. They weren't quite 6 weeks yet. And they did not want to try the pellets. And so you just had to put them back with her and keep testing them to try and get them onto the pellets instead. So yeah, just pay attention to how the mom's behaving, the amount of cages that you do have, or the space that you have to separate them, to make sure you don't get yourself in a pickle if you needed to separate other animals. But then also, how they are transitioning over.